What if the ultimate antidote to, modern hustle culture, clinical burnout, and just that low-level hum of anxiety we all carry around isn't a new morning routine or a mindfulness app,
Right.
but instead it's a 2,000-year-old theological dogma about a woman being taken up into the sky?
I mean, it sounds like a massive stretch when you phrase it exactly that way.
It really does. But that is exactly the profound connection we are exploring today for this deep dive.
Yeah, and we are looking at a 2026 homily delivered on the Feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
And the author of this homily brings a wildly unique perspective to the table. It's written by Dr. Father Darline Joseph Marianathan.
Which is such a fascinating dual lens.
It really is. He's a Catholic priest, but he is also a mental health professional. The source material notes he is actually writing a book right now titled Mary, Mother of Emotions.
Oh, wow, that completely changes how we read this text.
Exactly. Theology combined with clinical psychology. The mission for our deep dive today is to explore Mary's journey, not just as a distant religious history, but as a highly practical, surprisingly modern roadmap for managing the emotional overwhelm you might be feeling right this second.
We so often treat biblical figures like they were made of stone, completely detached from the visceral, messy reality of human emotion.
Right, like they didn't have bad days.
Exactly. But Dr. Father Darline refuses to do that. He takes the assumption, which is typically presented as this ethereal dogma about heavenly glory, and he anchors it to the mud and the grit of our daily struggles with mental well-being.
Finding hope when the world feels entirely chaotic.
Yeah.
So to understand the triumph at the end of Mary's story, the text argues we first have to fully define the scale of what she and you as the listener are actually up against.
The dragon.
Right. The homily doesn't start with mild everyday worries. It goes straight to the dramatic cosmic imagery found in the book of Revelation. We are talking about a woman clothed with the sun, facing off against a terrifying, multi-headed dragon.
And the author is using this apocalyptic imagery very deliberately. When you hear dragon, you shouldn't picture a literal flying reptile from a fantasy novel.
Obviously not.
No, Dr. Father Darline explicitly maps this ancient beast to the very real, very present forces of chaos and evil that seek to destroy human life and hope today.
He literally names these modern dragons in the text. Clinical anxiety, depression, crushing loneliness, addiction, the paralyzing fear of failure.
And just a profound despair about the future.
Naming them like that completely shifts the narrative. In modern psychology, there is a concept in narrative therapy called externalization.
Right, separating the person from the problem.
Exactly. By mapping depression or anxiety to a dragon, the homily is subtly telling you that your anxiety is not you, it is something attacking you.
That is such an important distinction.
It is. But I have to push back on behalf of anyone listening who's currently in the thick of it. Let's say you are battling severe clinical depression. How does visualizing a cosmic dragon actually help you get out of bed in the morning?
Well, it helps because it reframes the expectation of what a normal human life looks like. The homily clarifies a massive misconception about faith.
Which is?
The Book of Revelation and Dr. Father Darline's interpretation of it is absolutely not a promise that believers won't struggle.
Right. It's not saying just pray harder and your clinical depression will magically evaporate.
Exactly. What it promises is that the dragon does not get the final word. It is an assurance that God remains present in the absolute darkest, most confusing trenches of your pain.
And that evil will not ultimately triumph.
Right. It's an acknowledgement that the battlefield is real.
Which naturally forces the question. If the promise isn't that the dragon just disappears, how on earth are you supposed to fight it? If you are paralyzed by this overwhelming force, what is the strategy?
The strategy is found in how Mary reacts to her own moment of catastrophic life disruption. We see this in the Gospel of Luke during the Annunciation.
When she finds out she's going to be the mother of God.
Yeah. Mary, a young, unwed woman in first-century Judea, receives this astonishing news. This is not just surprising news. Sociologically and personally, it is terrifying.
It's a prime setup for a massive panic attack. And if we look at other figures in biblical history, they usually do not handle these moments well.
Oh, not at all.
When Moses is called, he basically begs God to pick someone else because he's a bad public speaker.
Right.
When Elijah gets overwhelmed, he literally hides in a cave and asks to die. When Peter is terrified, he completely denies even knowing Jesus. They panic, they retreat, they freeze.
But Mary's emotional management here is completely different. The homily points out that she does not retreat inward. She doesn't freeze in terror.
And she doesn't allow herself to become consumed by the sheer magnitude of her own circumstances.
Exactly. Instead, she immediately packs up and travels to the hill country to help her pregnant cousin, Elizabeth.
Which seems so counterintuitive.
It does. But Dr. Father Darline, wearing his mental health professional hat, highlights the profound psychological genius of this reaction.
Because modern neurobiology and psychology consistently demonstrate that connection, purpose, and service are essential mechanisms for surviving emotional overwhelm.
Yeah, when you are caught in an anxiety spiral, your brain's amygdala essentially hijacks your nervous system. You get tunnel vision.
Focusing entirely on the perceived threat to yourself.
Right.
It's that feeling where your chest is tight, your breathing goes shallow, and you literally cannot think about anything other than the disaster you are sure is about to happen.
Precisely. And one of the most effective cognitive circuit breakers for an amygdala hijack is altruistic action.
So by choosing to go serve Elizabeth, Mary forces her brain to reallocate resources from internal panic to external problem solving.
She steps outside the isolation chamber of her own fear. The homily suggests that taking action to care for someone else physically lowers our stress hormones.
It reestablishes our connection to reality. But I want to make sure we aren't painting her as some emotionless robot here, though.
Oh, definitely not.
The text doesn't imply she wasn't scared, right?
Yeah.
It's not like Gabriel showed up, dropped the heaviest news in human history,
Yeah.
and she just calmly checked her planner and said, cool, moving on.
Not at all. And this is why the upcoming book, Mary, Mother of Emotions, is such vital context. Mary's choice to reach out and serve does not mean she was devoid of fear or confusion.
Right.
It means she chose trust in the absolute midst of her terror. The homily draws a sharp line here. People fall into despair when they become entirely trapped within the architecture of their own worries.
And Mary dismantled that architecture by moving towards someone else who needed her.
Exactly.
Okay, so taking physical action, like cooking a meal for a friend when you're stressed about your own job, is a powerful cognitive circuit breaker.
Right.
But physical action is only half the battle. Your hands can be busy chopping vegetables, but your brain can still be catastrophizing about your bank account.
Oh, absolutely.
So, how did Mary stop the internal mental spiral? Because the homily doesn't just look at her physical journey, it examines her internal monologue.
Which brings us directly to the Magnificat, the famous prayer where Mary declares, "My soul magnifies the Lord." Dr. Father Darline asks us to analyze this prayer by looking at its negative space.
Paying close attention to what Mary is not saying.
Right.
I love that analytical approach. You learn so much about a person by what they refuse to entertain in their own head.
Think about it. She is a young woman in an incredibly vulnerable, dangerous social position. Yet in this prayer, she is not measuring herself against others.
She isn't comparing her chaotic life to the seemingly peaceful lives of the women around her.
Exactly. She refuses to live in resentment, and she does not fall into the trap of endless self-criticism.
Instead, she actively, intentionally remembers God's faithfulness. She forces her perspective wider than her immediate crisis.
Yeah.
Reading that section of the source material, it felt like I was reviewing a first-century masterclass in cognitive behavioral therapy.
It really is.
She is actively reframing her reality. But I have to play devil's advocate for you, because just be grateful is probably the most annoying, overused advice on the internet right now.
Oh, for sure.
If your life is falling apart, someone telling you to start a gratitude journal feels like toxic positivity. Does the homily differentiate between toxic positivity and what Mary is actually doing?
It makes a brilliant distinction. Toxic positivity demands that you suppress negative emotions and pretend everything is fine when it isn't.
It denies reality.
Right. But the psychological framework Dr. Father Darline outlines shows that true gratitude does not magically erase the difficulty.
Nor does it deny the pain.
Instead, gratitude changes your stance toward the difficulty.
So it's the difference between saying, this isn't heavy, and saying, this is incredibly heavy, but I have the strength to carry it because I am not alone.
Exactly. Mary's prayer is fundamentally dialectical. She holds two seemingly opposing truths at the exact same time. She acknowledges her lowliness and her vulnerability while simultaneously declaring that the creator of the universe is doing great things for her.
She anchors her core identity, not in her temporary fears or her potential societal ruin, but in her unshakable dignity as a child of God.
Yeah.
That concept of unshakable inherent dignity is the perfect bridge to the final and, frankly, most radical part of our deep dive.
Right, connecting it back to the assumption.
Exactly. We've unpacked Mary's psychological resilience and her spiritual coping mechanisms. But the homily insists that all of this internal mental health work is inextricably linked to the very physical bodily reality of the assumption itself.
Which is a huge leap.
It is. And this is where I originally struggled. If you are sitting in traffic today, overwhelmed by your dragons, why does a theological dogma about Mary's body being taken up to heaven actually matter to your daily life?
Well, to grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at the historical context the homily provides. The Assumption of Mary was formally defined as a dogma by Pope Pius XII in 1950. Think about the state of the world in 1950. Humanity had just crawled out of the wreckage of the Second World War. We had witnessed the Holocaust, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
And the mass slaughter of millions.
Right.
The world had literally just spent a decade treating human bodies as disposable meat. People were reduced to numbers, incinerated, and thrown into mass graves.
And in the immediate aftermath of that unprecedented degradation of human life, the Church stands up and formally declares the Assumption.
Wow.
It was a massive theological countercultural statement. By declaring that Mary was taken body and soul into heavenly glory, the Church was shouting to a traumatized world that the human body is not trash.
Human life is not disposable.
Exactly. The physical body matters infinitely to God, and it possesses an eternal destiny.
Wait, if our physical bodies and our very existence have inherent eternal value, well, that completely short-circuits the entire premise of modern hustle culture.
It really does.
Our current culture constantly bombards you with the message that your worth is a math equation. You are only as valuable as your productivity, your physical appearance, your bank account.
Or your social media metrics.
Right. If you aren't producing, you are useless.
And Dr. Father Darline draws that exact parallel. Hustle culture reduces humanity to mere utility. The Assumption elevates humanity to divine dignity.
That's a powerful contrast.
Because the homily is written by someone who deeply understands both theology and mental health, he provides a highly specific list of who matters because of this truth.
Who does he include?
He writes that the elderly matter, the sick matter, the unborn matter, the lonely matter, and crucially, he explicitly states that people struggling with mental health challenges matter.
Because your value isn't tied to your ability to, function perfectly in a capitalist society.
Right. No one is a burden, no one is forgotten, and we know this isn't just an exclusive VIP privilege granted only to Mary.
Because of that theological concept St. Paul mentions in his letter to the Corinthians, right? Which the homily highlights, Christ as the first fruits.
Yes.
We need to unpack first fruits because that sounds like a dietary supplement, but it is actually the mechanism that connects Mary's Assumption to the listener's future.
Yeah, so in ancient agriculture, the first fruits were the initial visible signs of the harvest. When you saw the first ripe apples on the tree, it was the absolute guarantee that the rest of the orchard was going to yield fruit.
Okay, that makes sense.
St. Paul calls Christ the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep, meaning Christ's resurrection is the guarantee that death has been conquered.
So if Christ's resurrection is the engine that actually generates salvation, what is Mary's role in this analogy?
Think of it like the first successful test flight of a revolutionary new airplane. Christ is the engineer, the inventor, and the power-making flight possible. But Mary is the first human passenger. Her Assumption is the ultimate proof of concept. When you see her taken into heavenly glory, it proves to everyone else still standing on the ground that the laws of spiritual gravity have permanently changed.
What Christ accomplished actually works for humanity.
Exactly.
That completely shifts how you view your own struggles. If Mary is the proof of concept, then her destiny is actually the blueprint for your destiny.
Which is incredible.
It is, and it brings this entire deep dive full circle. We started by looking at those terrifying dragons, the anxiety, the depression, the constant fear of failure.
Yeah.
We saw how Mary managed her own massive emotional disruption, not by panicking or retreating like other biblical figures, but through the cognitive circuit breaker of serving someone else.
Right.
We learned how she used the Magnificat to actively reframe her internal monologue, rejecting toxic comparison and choosing to anchor her identity in gratitude and divine dignity.
And we ended with the historical and theological defiance of the assumption itself. The radical truth that your body, your mind, and your life have eternal value regardless of your productivity.
It really is a masterful synthesis of ancient theology and modern psychological resilience.
It is. And Dr. Father Darline leaves the reader with a profoundly hopeful conclusion. When you are feeling crushed by the weight of your dragons, the assumption is the ultimate reminder that you are a pilgrim, not a wanderer.
You have a destination.
Right. Your story does not end in weakness, illness, suffering, or death. The final word on your life belongs to God, and that word is life.
I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you navigate the rest of your week. Dr. Father Darline closes his homily with a gentle, highly practical, almost humorous prayer for those moments when you catch yourself spinning out over things entirely out of your control.
It's a great prayer.
He suggests saying this: Lord, if you can guide a woman from Nazareth to become Queen of Heaven, perhaps you can also help me get through this day.
It really grounds everything back in the present moment.
It does. So I want you to think about that as you wake up tomorrow. What would happen if you treated your most stubborn, anxiety-inducing dragon not as a monster you have to defeat all by yourself, but as an invitation?
An invitation to connect.
Yes, an invitation to step outside your own worry, to reach out and serve someone else, and to remind yourself that your story, just like Mary's, is destined for something far greater than fear.